So Vatsal asks, Mark, what is the longest flight you've ever been on? Now, you know, there's these crazy long flights these days. You know, you can go from like New Zealand to like New York now. I mean, it's crazy, like 20-hour long flights. I've never been on a flight like directly that way, like non-stop that long. But I think the longest flight I've been on was when I was in high school and I was an exchange student in Australia. And I flew from Chicago to Sydney. But the thing was, when I got the ticket, it said it was a Chicago to Sydney direct flight. It didn't say non-stop, okay? So what ended up happening is I flew from Chicago to LA, which I think was like 4.5 hours, you know, from Chicago to LA. And then we sat on the tarmac for 4 hours at the gate waiting for the new passenger to come in. And we couldn't leave the plane because we were already on it, so we sat there for 4 hours. So we got, well, let's say 4 hours to LA, plus 4 hours waiting there. And then we had to fly from LA to Sydney, which was like 12 hours. So that was about 20 hours in one plane. And the funny thing was, is that was my second flight I ever had. My first trip was my 8th grade trip to Washington, DC. My second trip was flying to Australia to be an exchange student. So that was my longest flight. Now, my longest kind of trip flight I've done with the family is when we flew to Beijing. And the thing was, though, we found a really great deal with Finnair where you could kind of have like 18 hours or 12 hours in Helsinki. So we decided to do that. So we had the overnight flight to Helsinki, spent the day in Helsinki, enjoyed that, then went back to the airport and then flew overnight again to Beijing. Now, it sounds like it's really cool because you just do 2 overnight flights, totally simple. But the thing was, by the time we got to Beijing, we were totally wiped out because nobody slept on that first flight and nobody slept on the second flight. So we got there with 2 overnight flights in a row with no sleep, and we were just like, bleh. So it was a bit much. So I hope that helps you understand our longest flights. What have been your longest flights? Put in the comments section below and let us know where you flew to and how long that trip was. Bye from here in Montreal.